Hey, Sam, you come up with that intro line?
You didn't tell me that was today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Writer's Room with Sam and Jim. This is the show, as you probably know by now, where we invite aspiring writers into our little podcast Writer's Room here to help them work on and develop their stories. And you can help us out by going to Apple Podcasts, hit the subscribe button. Better yet, rate and review us. You can also join us for the conversation that's going on Facebook, on the Writer's Room with Sam and Jim page, or you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at the Sam and Jim. Now, we're going to break some story with Claire Nauman in just a couple minutes, but first, there's something I really want to go off on. Sam, brace yourself. I want to go off about something really unusual. It's about Hollywood getting better. There's actually a way in which we're getting...
Better at what?
Better.
I can't wait to find out.
So, we're having dinner the other night. We have a mutual friend who's a therapist, Beverly Hills. He has various people in entertainment who are clients, and one of them invited him to be therapist on the show that he's on, which he can't do because it's his client. But he'd never heard of this, and neither had I. And as it turns out, there was just an article in the New York Times about shows hiring therapists to be on set, or at least be on call for everyone involved in the show. And I thought it was fascinating in that we write these tremendously intense, dramatic moments. We have people experiencing all different kinds of trauma. And in the modern world, people have language for trauma. People actually recognize that, oh, that's a trigger for me. Mm-hmm. And so these actors, instead of, say, you're doing Underground, right, and you're a black person and you're reliving the slavery stuff and it's triggering racist things for you and all that, every day you're getting back in front of the camera and you're confronting those same traumas over and over again. Mm-hmm. They had a therapist. Available on set to talk to them. Also for the writers, for directors, for the crew, anyone who needs help so that you can bail people out of situations before it gets too dark for them, before whatever trauma has been triggered or injury has come back. Because of this, it can actually get dealt with right up front.
So that's making Hollywood better. You mean it is a better place to be?
A better place to be. Where instead of the old world where we told people to tough it out, or we even inflicted more emotional damage on people.
I thought you were just supposed to get a bottle of whiskey and go geld a steer or something.
Right. That's the classic. That would be Texas. I believe that is therapy in Texas, isn't it, Taylor?
That's right. That was my experience growing up Jewish in New York.
Yeah,
that's what we did.
Right. But I really like that. And one of the other things that came up is the idea of using it for writers' rooms, because sometimes writers' rooms get stuck. And even writers' rooms are sometimes confronting very traumatic stuff, child abuse, say, or whatever it might be that's tapping into things that have damaged the writers in their lives. Or there's some emotionally charged thing that has taken a room down. And we've been in rooms that have been taken down by emotional issues.
We have. And certainly there's a lot of sharing / I don't say oversharing, but extreme sharing.
You have to go deep.
You have to go deep, and people share a lot, especially as the room gets more and more comfortable with one another, and stuff comes out. And there's really no place for it to go because we still at the end of the day have to be professional, move on to the next day. And it's a weird relationship because you just opened a vein, you just shared something big, and then, okay, goodbye, everybody. And then you come back in the next day, okay, we're going to break Act 3. And it's like that never happened.
Right.
But of course it did happen, and there's no way to get it out.
And you could bring in a professional to help moderate that experience, right? To help people digest what they're hearing and maybe even get better story out of it.
I have to say, on a television show, I think that therapists be working a solid 40, 50 a week.
It would be nice to see all the drama happen in front of the camera instead of behind it. Okay, let's get into this week's show. Hi, Claire. This is Jim.
Hello.
Claire.
Hi.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
You're always there with the questions, Sammy.
So JR always gives us a little bit of a bio so that we at least have something that we know. And you did something that you started writing fan fiction as a kid. And a lot of people do that. But then you went to college for biology, and you worked for a startup that dealt in antibody treatment. So you've got a career that makes sense in the future if you want it.
Right.
And then you you say, fuck that. Move cross country.
Waste all that money your parents saved for your college education. Oh, I'm sorry. That's the parent in me.
To become a writer, Claire, why? What happened?
Well, I think that the writing from childhood, it turns out it wasn't just a phase. It was what I always wanted to do. And I think I took the detour that made sense at the time to go into science because I also liked science.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a lot out of that experience. You know, I got to work in the corporate world. I got to gain confidence in my adult skills as a grown-up. And I was able to put a little money aside. And I decided there was no time like the present.
And you realize the only mistake you made is you didn't put a lot of money aside.
Well, I kind of got to the point in my biology career where I either needed to go back and get a PhD or a business degree. And PhD requires a lot of writing, a lot of science writing. And so I thought, if I'm going to be writing that much, why don't I write what I want to write?
Well, I can answer that question for you.
Again, we're back to the little money.
JR made the same decision. He was an engineer before this.
I know.
And
we connected on that.
Yeah. But what I find interesting, all right, look, we all have made sacrifices to come out here, and we have all terrified our parents with this choice or annoyed them. I'm sure somewhere there's a parent out there that said, yeah, you should drop all this, this paycheck, this benefits, all this stuff, this career stability, all that. And yeah, you should go chuck everything for something that has a very low rate of return. There's got to be at least one or two out there that did that. But I don't know any of them. But then you came out, and here's where I want to get into your idea, because we have the log line. It has nothing to do with any of that. You're not using what you know there at all. And people have said to me and Jim, you guys should do a restaurant show. We've never done it once. We've never even tried. And that's something we know a lot about. And JR, we just read JR's script, and it was a mythological fantasy thing, animated. Nothing to do with engineering.
It's like anti-engineering.
It's not even science fiction. So this just goes to show, whatever, we're always working against what makes sense, one way or the other.
That's true. But I also think, it's not just maybe my actual experience, but the experience of being in a competitive world and doing something unconventional to pursue my interests. I think those qualities can come out in any story that I write, even if it's not particularly about the worlds that I've lived in.
100%.
I'll say, too, when I was in college, my senior year, I got asked by the English department to help judge a writing contest, campus-wide contest. And we were all sort of deeply embarrassed when we absolutely agreed that the winning paper was on thymocyte T-cell production. I still remember it because it was science writing, and it was so clear and crisp, and I could understand these complex ideas. And that ability to write clearly in science could really help you as a TV writer.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
He's alone there, by the way. So, Claire, tell us what your show's about.
Okay, so it's about an emotionally repressed college student who is the victim of a curse, which requires her to love certain people and earn their love in return. Otherwise, they will die. So she has to figure out how to love in time to save lives and hopefully get to the bottom of the mystery about who cursed her. So it's a little bit of Veronica Mars meets Beauty and the Beast as a 1-hour procedural drama.
Wow, the Beauty and the Beast thing I didn't see.
I didn't see that either.
Yeah, that's right, though. It's completely right. Here's the thing. I actually think this completely works, and there's an engine in there. There's a story engine in that thing. Now, the one thing that I want to ask you is, what's the tone here?
I see it as a romantic dramedy. So there's plenty of banter, and there's some amusing, sort of almost rom-com situations. But the stakes are quite high, so it has those dramatic, angsty moments as well.
Yeah, and that's great. I'm glad you said that, because built into this, there's a lightness to it. A silly, not silliness is the wrong thing, but, the idea, it's light. And I think it should be a dramedy. And then my next question is, can we do a dramedy where the stakes are someone will die? Does that run counter to that? It's like what was the great, it's going way back, but with the pie maker.
Yeah.
Pushing Daisies.
Yeah, that's right. Pushing Daisies.
Daisies.
And people died there, didn't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so, yeah, I guess you can. And you're right. You're 100% right, Claire. Those are great stakes. People die if the protagonist can't achieve their goal. There's no higher stakes than that.
But my question is this, and it's kind of fundamental, which is normally in a TV show, you're rooting for your main character to have a romance with some specific other character, right? Like it's will they, won't they, whatever. It's two people working on a love together. Her needing to fall in love with someone new every week?
Nope, she didn't say that. She didn't say that. And actually, that's something I wanted to ask you about. So let me jump into that. You said requiring her to love and be loved.
Well, it's the procedural of the week.
Yeah.
It's the
But what does that mean?
Okay.
What does that mean? That's the crux of this, because Jim's right. She can't fall in love with the new romantic interest every week, right? Because then the question is what happens at the end. So she has to say goodbye to her romantic interest because she's got to go fall in love with that guy. Or can she? I don't know. Well, what do you think?
So I have that figured out.
All right.
Let me share.
See, the biologist figured it out. She figured out
clear,
everything.
logical thinking. She knows what she needs.
So the pilot kicks off with her. She's cursed. We'll find out why later. But she's cursed, and her first target is this cute guy. So she thinks, okay, great. We'll just hook up. That'll fulfill the curse. It doesn't. That's not love. So he dies, and she becomes the suspect in his death, puts her in the orbit of an FBI agent who is investigating her for this murder. And she eventually has to reveal to him the truth about what's going on. And they team up together and investigate this curse. And they have to figure it out before she has to fall in love with her next target, who is, of course, this FBI agent. So naturally, they are exact opposites. She's closed down emotionally. He's very effusive and big-hearted. And they get on each other's nerves, especially because he actually doesn't really see this curse as such a bad thing for her. Maybe she should learn how to love. So in the pilot, eventually they get trapped in a situation where they kind of finally start to see eye to eye, just as they find a suspect for this crime. And so disaster is averted, and they're not quite sure if they prevented it by falling in love or by catching the suspect. So they think they're out of the woods until she sees a new target because of the curse, and her magic watch that counts down starts counting down. And that's the end of the pilot. So she does have a love interest in her teammate, in the agent she's teamed up with, and they're resisting, but they have developed feelings for each other while she has to go on every week and find a way to connect with someone new. And it doesn't have to be romantic love. It can also be friendship. So it could be that she has to kind of find some way to connect is a little bit more accurate than fall in love.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that helps a lot. That's where I figured you have to go. And I see how Jim was confused because it says it's love interest of the week, hour-long procedural, but it's not love interest of the week. It's she has to get a friendship, get someone to really care for her, or she has to really care for someone, probably someone unlikable.
That would seem to be a given.
Right. And or someone that she doesn't like for some specific reason, or that she is obnoxious to for some reason that person he or she doesn't like.
And that would be the secret of the curse, right? That it's actually making her confront the problems in herself by the people she has to go deal with.
Is that true, Claire? Is that what you see?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So what are the problems in herself that she's going to be dealing with?
So I think her driving emotional wound is that her only parent, her dad, abandoned her. So she's now alone in the world, and she's decided that love is the root of her problems. If she's never, loved her dad, she wouldn't be hurting so much now. So she's kind of sworn off love when the story gets started. So I was interested in the idea of a curse that kind of confronts this deep rejection of love and forces her to find it within herself again.
Well, the question is then, it doesn't work because it can't work. Right? So she just has the same drive in every episode trying to feel love, but it doesn't work. Right? She does feel it because if she does feel it and she saves the guy's life, then she's cured. So what does she do in the next episode? Because she did manage to feel loved.
Right. So I think the curse resets. It's kind of like Groundhog Day. Like she achieved the goal of the episode. She manages to find this connection, but the curse resets and selects a new target for her.
No, I get that, but we're talking about how she changes as a person.
Right, and it can have different layers on her, like different flaws in her that get corrected by the different people. Each different person helps her change some little piece of herself. Mm-hmm. I'm just wondering how many times we can do that.
Yeah, that's the question. Because we want to keep moving the ball just a little bit. We're not talking about big moves. We're not talking about shifts in plot. I think actually there's too much plot in here. There's the magic watch. There's other things that we can get into. But the idea that she finds someone and she has to make them care about her, or she has to learn to care about them even though they're noxious, that I could see week to week. But the question is, how is it not repetitive? Obviously, the people are different, and that'll make it different. But how is she changing incrementally through the course of the series?
I see it as her kind of building the toolbox of emotional maturity. So I'm sure you've heard of the 5 love languages, for instance. So maybe one week she's able to do something, an act of service for someone, and that's kind of something that she learns as a skill for connection. And then another week, she spends quality time with someone. So those are some examples. Mm-hmm. And I think based on the variation, like every week it could be, she could have to find a connection with a death row inmate or with someone from the opposite political party, which I think, plays into the theme of even even the most different people can find something in common and something to connect over. So I think that is a rich area that can be revisited over and over.
You know, then in that case, then I wonder if the issue isn't her, which is that she's too mild.
She's got to be really obnoxious.
She's got to be a misanthrope. You know, I mean, she's really, I think you might be protecting her too much. This idea that because her dad didn't love her, she didn't ever learn to love, or I'm sorry, that he died, and so she shut that part off. I wonder if that's too limited. I wonder if she needs to be a really broken person. And I almost want to say, who's the worst person? And I would go back to like House. Remember the show House with the doctor?
Right. Yes, I love that show.
Yeah, and that was a beautifully written show. But it was just an idea. All that it was it's the most brilliant caregiver doctor in the world doesn't like people. And he keeps having to save their lives. And no matter what, he has to deal with them as people in some way. And it goes, and he never got to the end of the series. And he was like, okay, now I can deal with people. He never could, but he had to work against that sometimes to get what he needed, which was, I need to be released from my clinic hours, which was the thing they ran for a season or two. And then, or I need to figure out this person. I need to understand this person so I can understand what's making them sick. Maybe that would help.
I really like that.
Now, let me say something like that might address another issue that I have, which is this show right now is very conventional. And I think, and that is a definite positive because that's why the engine fundamentally works, in my opinion. But it's a negative in that the Scully-Mulder kind of combo thing and all of that, we need to funk that up so that it doesn't feel like a ripoff. And the thing is, we can do that because I don't want to mess up the engine, which is good. Like that's her mission every week. So her being a misanthrope or something like that, someone who really doesn't like people, what is her relationship then like with the FBI guy? What is her procedure at that point if she's like that? What is her house like? How does she live her life? All that gets very specific and then makes it less and less and less conventional, like in the case of House, for example.
Oh, yeah. No, I totally agree. I think that's a really good point. Like, to make that conflict pop as much as possible and be unique, definitely it makes sense to make her even more unlikable.
Yeah.
This relationship with the FBI agent, can you talk for a second? You said the curse comes on in some way, and they're looking for the person who inflicted the curse on her. Is that right?
Yeah.
So what's their story going forward? Because it feels like at some level, to keep them interacting and to keep them together, is that like the Uber story of the series, is finding this person who cursed her and how she works with the FBI guy, their adventures together, trying to get to that?
Yes. And I think the week-to-week adventure is that he is much more emotionally in tune with people and actually likes people. So he kind of teaches her how to connect with these people. He's kind of the one who gives her ideas and kind of helps guide her in how to connect with people since she has none of those skills.
So then my question is, and I totally get that, and that makes sense to me, why is he a cop then? I mean, for us, the writers, right? What does that do for us? Or what does that do for you?
In my mind, the way they're introduced is that he has to investigate her since she's a person of interest in the death of someone. But I suppose, he could be any kind of interested investigative party.
Well, because it's not really about a crime of the week, right? There's no crimes happening every week. It's just that she's got to save someone's life by doing something, having an emotional connection with them. And she's someone that's hard for.
Well, and if there is something about this person who cursed her is a criminal in some way or stole or whatever, I don't know what that backstory is. Like, I could see where it could be relevant, and you're certainly bringing him into her world in an appropriate way. If she's a person of interest in someone's death, you could have that beat where they first meet and they don't have to live because of his criminal investigations. Doesn't have to be the driver of them being together. Like, they can have another different connection. I mean, if the things that are happening with these because of her curse has her, relentlessly pestering him to help her, get updates on the case. How are we finding this person? Who's the cursed person? The person who gave her the curse.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter that he's a cop or that. It could be. It's just not an essential. Like
it could.
Mulder Scully, it was obviously essential that they both be. That's what got them there to every case. But this doesn't get them anywhere.
Well, no, but that's what I'm. And again, that's back to the question I'm asking, which is back to the origin of the curse. Who is this person? And if they are enough of a criminal to justify the guy being an FBI agent.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. I suppose in my mind, I do think So finding out who's behind the curse is kind of the season 1 arc. And I do think it will have to be her, a sorceress who happens to be her mother that she never knew. So there is kind of a family component in that. This mom character, in her villainous way, was trying to help her daughter develop these skills to love people, but in the most messed up, horrible way possible.
Is there any way that the FBI agent has encountered other curses or other things that this person has done? Is this in like an ongoing, there's a reason why this agent is sticking with this investigation?
I got to jump in, though. Let me, go ahead.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
I'm curious.
That had not occurred to me, but that's interesting. Absolutely.
Well, what it does for me in this basic structure is it gives me a reason, and whether or not the sorcerer is her mom or whoever did this is her mom. The question is, why is this guy staying on this case with what's kind of a Fruit Loops idea that someone has cursed me and I have to do this thing and all that stuff? It would help if there were other things that led him to be so invested in the case.
This is the part where I jump in and say, no way. Here's why. It's not a show about curses, all right? It's a show about this woman and her curse, which is the worst thing that could happen to her. And I don't want him investigating curses. I propose there are no curses in this world except for her curse. That's the only piece of magic that we want or need. And I would say, all right, this is my pitch. This is just my pitch.
It's wrong.
Claire, you can pick the good one or the bad one, you pick. But it's your show. But I don't want to know about why she has this curse particularly. Any answer you come up with is, as a sci-fi supernatural fan, is always a little lacking when you find out later. It's kind of like all those Scientologists that have to work their way up all to the top level, and then they get to look in the box. And then what was that writer that was a Scientologist that got to look in the box because he achieved the top level? And then it was all about Martians coming. It was like, this is it? Paul Haggis. That was Paul Haggis who did that and wrote about that. But I feel like whatever answer you have, first of all, it has to be threaded throughout the whole season. So by the time we get there, it's obvious. But then it creates this question of, oh, there's a sorceress. And then what does that mean? There's a world with sorcery. What other sorcery does she want to do? And I almost don't care. I am really into this idea that here's a woman with this curse. She is someone this curse is the worst thing for her. And she has to does this every week. And I never need to find out the knowledge. I need to know why. Another thing is, in terms of a cop, the reason it could be a cop for me in this pitch, he could also be a probation officer. Well, who do cops come into contact with? The worst people, murderers and rapists and pedophiles. Everybody's terrible, right? Theoretically, or they're in jail for for the wrong reason. But the people that she should be either having to fall for or fall for her, some of them can be really not good people or people who have done terrible things. And this is a show about their redemption a little bit. So that to me is more appealing than all the other stuff. Okay, Claire, I've said my piece. What do you think?
I like it. I think that I'm not quite as interested in the sorcery either. I'm more interested in the emotional journey week to week of her having to overcome her inability to love. So that does resonate with me for sure.
I mean, if that's the question, this comes down to what's the core thing that interests you about this show? Whatever that is that you're about to say, everything else should serve it. And if it doesn't serve it, let's lose it. That's what I'm proposing.
Yeah, sure. My personal inspiration for the show was coming out of isolation in the pandemic and getting back in the dating world and reemerging and kind of wondering if it was all really worth the effort, and realizing that just like, when you don't exercise, you get out of physical shape. When you don't practice putting yourself out there and being vulnerable and being open to love, you also kind of get out of emotional shape. And so I thought it would be interesting to explore someone who was forced to get back in emotional shape in kind of a dramatic way possible.
Then I guess the challenge I would give you is this love interest character who's currently an FBI agent could be anything. What is, beyond the fact that he's sort of yin to her yang, right? Like he's this open, accepting, finds it easy to like and love people.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they tied together? What is the thing? What is his place in her world where she's running around doing this?
I think he's invested in no one else dying. So he feels compelled to help her on this journey because of the stakes if she fails.
Why does he not want people to die? These people to die?
I suppose I could use the shortcut of him being a law enforcement officer and it's his job to prevent more deaths, but
that's not a character. That's his job. I mean, that's okay, but then I would say, well, why did he become a cop then? And these aren't logic points. I just want to say this is just asking these questions to dig him out. Like, for example, he's got his own redemption thing that's going on, which is maybe he feels bad about all these poor people that he's putting into jail, because the fact is that the vast majority of people who are in jail are poor. And maybe he's sick of that. Or maybe he's put in people that he doesn't think were guilty, but he's a cop. It's not his job to convict them. I mean, and now he's trying to help some of them. I don't know. I'm thrashing about, but trying to get into his character, something that wounded him a little bit. And now that's why he's attracted to her, because she's the way back for him too, what she does.
I love that. That's great. I will definitely think about that.
I mean, we just want to say I still think this is as you pitched, a dramedy, right? So it's not that we need this dark. He has put innocent people in jail, and she has, she has sex with guys she doesn't care. She's never loved, and it's just so terrible. And then they do this stuff, and it's gritty. It's not that, but this is the wellspring from which story comes from, right?
He's failed to protect someone in his life who died, and so this is his chance to help protect other people from dying.
I'm worried about that because that is a classic answer. The problem is that's a singular thing, and I wish that it was deeper than that for him. That's why I push back on Claire a little bit. It's always you want an inciting thing that happened to the character that caused that, but I'm more interested in the fact that this is a cop who is at the bottom of his well because he's really disenchanted with what he's been doing, and she is offering him a light. And you can talk about he said, I remember the first person I put in jail that shouldn't have gone there. And it was this kid, and he was 17 and he went away for 20 years. And I helped do that. But
So you think that her falling in love with these people is somehow fixing them and preventing them from a further life of crime? Is that sort of your pitch?
Well, I think
in a way that makes his life more bearable?
Well, not falling in love, right? Because it's not limited to that. But
well, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, but the having some connection with these people. Yeah, I mean, I think this is a supernatural version of an amazing social worker. There's something great about that, and that makes it too plain. And I don't want to take out magic. I'm not against magic. We wrote a show with magic for a long time, but I'm just that made it sound more boring than it is. I don't feel like it's boring, but I want to see her. I think there's redemption. There's got to be redemption all over the place. You don't think so?
Yeah, that makes total sense. Yeah, absolutely. I do need to think more about his drive and his, why is this a way out for him as well as for her?
Yeah, that's the part I don't understand either. I don't get his character. I don't get what connects them.
Well, what connects them is an interesting question. Certainly the idea that he sees that she is what you were asking. Now I understand what you were saying. He sees that by her helping people, she is helping people, and he wants to do that because he wants to help people, and that will help him out of his hole. Is that what you're saying?
It needs to be something like that. He needs some engine, because basically in this version, she's going to be an asshole, more or less, right? Curmudgeon, misanthrope, however you want to describe it. And he's someone who likes people, but why is he sticking around with her? Mm-hmm. And if it's not some, there's some uber crime,
he believes in her.
He
believes in her. But he doesn't even need to know the curse part then. Which, by the way, I was going to say, Claire, one thing I was going to ask is, I hope you have an answer. And this may not be important, actually, now that I think about it, but how does he know that she's cursed? Because all she does is prevent death. I can see how she could figure it out, but she can't demonstrate to him.
Well, unless she says, unless this happens, this guy Mike is going to die at exactly 11:57 p.m. because that's when my watch runs out.
Right.
And then 11:57 he drops dead. No. So she's been able to predict, you know what I mean? Like, there could be a way to demonstrate.
Yeah, and then he's like, well, could be not, but okay, I'll help you. And then it's sort of that he's not quite buying it. He says, I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it's because of you, because you're an amazing person. But she knows the truth. We know the truth.
It could go either way.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that he believes the magic.
He could then see her watch start to glow and the hands wind around.
And that's the problem. Yeah, that's where I get.
Well, it's a dramedy. Like, it depends on what helps the story.
I mean, I'm worried about the magic in that way because it can get cheesy fast. That's just taste. That's a
good point. I had imagined him finding out sort of very quickly in the pilot, but perhaps he does not need to know.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just was a question to me, because then it goes to his motivation. And the reason we're getting into this, I think, is not just to talk about him. It's to talk about what's their dynamic, because that's the core of the show.
Well, and it feels like, this then is the actual long arc of the season, is whatever obstacles they have within themselves that are getting between them as two people, in some way they find each other across the arc of the season, or something should change between their dynamic as a byproduct of all these other little events they've dealt with together.
Claire, we just laid a lot on you. What do you think?
Yes, no, that's all great. I would totally watch that show.
So I don't think he likes her at the start. I don't think he should. I don't think anybody likes this girl.
Yeah, exactly.
This woman. I don't think they do.
Which has the thing, like, that's why I'm still looking for that piece of why he's sticking around. Whether maybe he thinks he saw some magic, or maybe, I don't know what it is, but something that he can't put her down and he keeps sticking around. I don't know what that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or it's just that he doesn't like her, but he likes what she does. And when she sees him, when he sees her convert someone, make a connection with someone, that's what changes his mind about her. She might then turn around and tell him to go fuck himself, and she might kick a puppy. She's that kind of person. But in that moment, she saw it. She saw he saw behind the veils and saw that in there's something. Now, he doesn't know that she's motivated by this curse, but she felt something in that moment, too, with that case of the week.
I wonder, in this world where he is at a bottom, he sort of lost his handle on how to deal with life, whatever, if there's someone in which they're arbitrarily thrown together as co-workers, or something where it's less, he sort of doesn't have a choice but to be around her, but then he begins picking up on these signals and seeing this stuff, and she's doing things that don't seem like her to him because he doesn't like her, but then she's doing these things and he's going, oh, wait a minute, but that's good. That appeals to me.
Well, I thought Claire's idea was pretty strong, though, which is he suspects her in a murder because she slept with the guy. I like that because she slept with the guy, and we find out the reason why the guy died is she had zero feeling for the guy, and the guy had zero feeling for her.
That's fine. I'm just looking for the ongoing, right?
Yeah.
Like, because that's an episode, maybe 2 or 3 if he's still checking back. But, like, he's off into other stuff, right?
No, because he wants to help her.
I know, but I
don't feel like I need a job to have them put them together. You want an external pressure to puts them there together somehow.
If he doesn't like her that much, I'm looking for a reason. And maybe an execution works out. Maybe that's enough. Maybe he sees enough in 2 or 3 episodes while she's still a suspect that he gets there.
What do you think, Claire? See, we're putting you on the spot now, are we?
Yeah, no.
Claire's been outside vaping the whole time. Yeah. She's like, I'm sorry, what?
I've got a cloud of CBD. I don't know what you're saying.
So I guess in my mind, if he finds out about the curse in episode 1, then they are teamed up finding a way to break the curse. And that's what keeps them together, regardless of their antithesis for each other. But yeah, that's a great question. And I mean, obviously the best romantic comedies are people who hate each other, who are forced to be around each other constantly. So that's definitely the ingredients I want in here. I do think it's an interesting idea that somehow they are arbitrarily around each other, which kind of helps with they can hate each other as much as you want them to.
I mean,
and they have to still be around each other. But yeah, I'm not sure. I'll have to think about it.
Sam's right. Like, it is good. Like, that basic setup is good. It's just, what's the engine going forward? I don't quite know what that is. The idea that he's all in and wants to break the curse, at some level, if he's looking at her and seeing that what this curse is doing to her is actually doing good things for people and her, does he really want to break it?
Yeah, I mean, he does. I had the same thought. And then I thought, well, obviously he wants to break it because some people are dying. So it's not good enough for that. But I find it a little like it's not an important driver. That's the crazy thing. First of all, we don't want him to solve this curse because then there's no show. Right. So he's never going to. And I'm not that interested in it, in that struggle because it's actually doing great things for people and her.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's like I'm almost rooting against the central drive of the character. It's not like she's going to discover her mother. She's going to kill the dragon. All these things I want. No. She wants to end the show. That's what she wants. Like, I like this show. Why do you want to end it? And so does he. And they're working together to end the show because the mystery is not that important at that point. So I don't know that, I'm well aware, by the way, Claire, that we are just, killing babies right and left.
It's a slaughter in a nursery.
It's okay.
But we're just trying to hone it down to that central thing that you love, which is the two of them together, which we want to make hard for them to be together in a real way, and we dig why, and then also what is the week to week that we really need. And if her overarching goal is to get rid of this curse, I believe that. But I think that's a slow burner kind of thing. We definitely don't get there by the end of the season 1. There might be a nice turn there, when the curse gets worse, or things happen and then we don't know where it's going. But you don't have to solve that problem because you're writing just one script.
Right.
All right. So don't put too much on your plate to solve every single element until you actually write a beautiful script. The network wants to meet with you. They do, and they say, all right, tell us about the next 3 seasons. But there's a lot of road between that and this moment. Right?
I thought an interesting season later on would be that the curse flips and now she has to hate people and get them to hate her. But now that she's developed all these skills of loving people, it's really difficult and it really messes with her.
Well, it's interesting. That's a lot easier to do, though. That's a lot. That's almost too easy. But
first, you get the swastika tattooed on your forehead. Then,
Claire, I think the engine is really solid, and I think if you just push them to more extremes, and now because we have a recognizable engine, we have it, so now you have room to really get funky. I would caution you to be careful of mythology, because even that's what we all do. All fantasy, sci-fi writers, we always love to talk about mythology, but then the best shows have very little of it, actually. Or at least they imply there's a lot more, and they take a long time to get to it. Or in the case of, say, Game of Thrones, it's 700-page books, or whatever that is, and they really have time to unspool it, which we don't in television. And so I would just keep it simple. What do you think, Jim? That makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think the real thing in this version is going to be the stories of the people that she is drawn to, right? It's a Picket Fences, Northern Exposure. Those are old shows, but like that.
Right, Touched by an Angel.
I was thinking that, but I was thinking more the quirky, offbeat. You want really unusual circumstances and unusual characters that you're encountering.
Yeah. Well, they were in those shows, but the thing is, and I don't remember those shows very well, it was a long time ago, but they were schmaltzy because that was the style of the day.
No, that's not what I'm talking about at all.
No. I know you're not. But the idea, now we can find truly broken people. You know, we can find really funky people that are really hard to like or hard to get to like people, and they've got a modern spin on it. It's not
sure, but I guess what I'm saying is, with that already established, right? Is their circumstances should be interesting and unorthodox and unusual, and not just same old, same old. You're going to have to build really interesting stories for what the person's problem is. What is their particular emotional handicap? How is that affecting their lives? To do a dramedy out of it.
Mm-hmm. Although we're only going to see them in one episode, so you may need, right? Because that person disappears after the episode. Yeah, so you have limited real estate to establish. Well, I'm telling Claire, so we need limited. You're not going to.
I'm just saying there's not a crime motivating the story. There's none of that drive. The drive is coming purely out of who is this character? How are they interesting and unorthodox and captivating enough that I want to go on a 45-minute to 60-minute journey watching her interact?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a tall order. But that's the fun part. But that is the thing. You have a simple show, but if it's 12 episodes, you need 12 very interesting people
that have interesting reflections back on her.
Right. Claire, you with us? You kind of hate Jim right now, don't you? You hate him, so it's okay.
No.
It's okay.
No, not at all.
You wouldn't be alone.
It's a tall order, but I think that is the core of the show, is that it's going to have to be her, someone that really struggles with other people that are really interesting, but also they're struggling too. And the two of them coming together is what solves the problem, not only of saving their life, which is her problem, but their own problem, which is it moves their ball a little bit too. And that's why I think it's kind of that there is a sweetness to it that I don't think you run from. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, look at Ted Lasso, the sweetest show on television, and it's a monster hit, and it should be. I love that show. We all do. But it's sweet. And they just did a Christmas episode, and it was the sweetest, a little schmaltzy, but so sweet. And I was like, oh, my God, my teeth hurt from this thing, and I will happily watch it again. And there's something nice about that, but just work against that too, and then know that you can have that sweet, but then, these characters can be deeply messed up and in deeply messed up worlds. That'll be intriguing.
I don't know if JR mentioned, but I'm a big Haven fan. And
you're the one.
I knew there was. Wait, you must be Canadian. Are you Canadian?
No, I'm not Canadian.
No.
And one thing that in the back of my mind inspired me with this is that one thing I love about Haven is it is a bit of a case of the week show, but there is always an emotional solution where someone has to properly grieve or forgive someone or make a sacrifice. And so I think that kept the case of the week really emotionally engrossing to have those emotional stakes. So that was kind of in the back of my mind as well.
Well, and your main character's journey is not unlike Audrey's in having to go figure out this person and their situation and find a way to get them through it.
Right. Usually by connecting them. And actually, one of the challenges we had in the Haven Writers Room was that we would have the curse whispering at the end, where she would sit there and talk them out of their curse, basically. And that was always hard for us because we're like, oh no, we can't do that again. She can't just get there and say, listen to yourself, be true to your, it was something.
A challenge.
It was a challenge to
really
stay away from that. But I don't think you have that problem, because in this case, she's trying to get them to have affection for her, and that's going to be hard for her. She's not good at it, and she's never going to be good at it. If she's too good at it, then your show gets too easy, and you don't want that, obviously. But I'm glad you enjoyed Haven. Yeah, that's nice to hear.
Great show. I genuinely am obsessed with it. So very exciting to be talking to you guys.
Claire, it was exciting to talk to you too.
Yes,
and we deal with a lot of really dark, intense shows that we've worked on, that we write. The pilot we just finished, we blew up the world. It's just a lot of dark, and this show has light, and I think that's great.
In the post-COVID environment, just as you were saying, coming out of COVID, wanting to learn how to socially reconnect with people again, it's exactly the kind of stuff people want, I think.
Yeah, and don't work against that. I mean, you want to make things more complicated because that's that, but it doesn't have to be.
Own it.
Yeah, own it. Don't run away from it. And if someone's like, well, it's a little sweet, and you say, great, and maybe it's not for that person.
But it's for a bunch of people.
But
sweet
it's for
goes
a lot of
long
people.
way.
Yeah, and it's uncommon these days anyway. Thank you for this idea, and good luck with it.
Thank you so much. No, you've been really helpful. I have a lot to think about, and I'm excited to dive in.
All right. Good luck, Claire.
Thank you.
And that's all we've got for you this week. Our producer, J.R. Zamora-Thal, is working the mixing board.
Our logo was designed by Julien Debar-Monclair, and our music was provided by Buddha-Rays out of Austin, Texas.
If you want to get in touch, we are at The Salmon Gym on Instagram and Twitter. And you can find us on Facebook and YouTube as The Writers Room with Sam and Jim.
And if you like hanging out in the room with us, give us a follow on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
And tell a friend, would you, so we can get JR paid. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.